those who are not here. And those who should be here aren't here. But that's the way it works. But first of all, I want to thank Mike Dale and his staff for organizing this town hall, along with the representatives. I want to make a special notice of this because Mike, I have known Mike, with great passion in working for the vulnerable and the voiceless forever, ever since I've known him. I worked for Centro Cultural for 20 years, and I know in some situations I had to send some of the clients that had very difficult situations, and I sent it to them or to him. And also I want to thank the representatives because this is the a special talking about preaching to the choir, they didn't hear anything. So thank the representatives because they are taking some of their time on a Saturday morning to listen to the stories of lament, a collection of stories from faith communities and from organizations in an effort to bring about a solution. It's a long time overdue solution. And we just need to face this very complex issue, just as it is a very complex the labor market problem. In my 20 years of experience of Centro Cultural in Washington County in Cornelius, I came across hundreds of people that came for service to Centro, and I will address some examples from the migrant perspective. Something that is another very special group of people that very few members of the Anglo community have penetrated and learned what really is happening within the community itself. Most people that come to this country, in my experience with Centro, they looked at Centro Cultural as a ray of light and hope in the string of problems that they face, in the loneliness that they have to put up with as they come to this country as newcomers to this community. I will bring the experience of a couple of families, a couple of people that illustrate the magnitude of the problem that we are talking about this morning. The names are not real. I invented them, but the people are real. They live in our community. They live in Hillsborough. One person lives in Forest Grove, and they are in our area. One person is already dead, but this illustrates the magnitude of the problem. The first person, his name is Aniceto Arguello. His nickname is Cheto. One day, he sent his wife to visit her parents who lived in another town. And Cheto, or Aniceto, used this time when his wife was away to write a note, to consolidate his thoughts, and to make a decision to leave the house. And he left a note on the table of his kitchen saying, I'm leaving you because I can no longer bear this situation. I'm leaving for the United States. If you want to, you may go with the children and stay with my mother's home, at my mother's home. In any case, it is your problem. Don't look for the donkey, the chickens, the TV, and other items, because I sold them. Love you, your Cheto. What a cruel note. But it depicts the reality of hundreds of people who face the bitter reality of not being able to find a job or not being able to sustain a family with a minimum wage. They migrate to the north in hopes to find work and a better future for their families. Some people succeed, and some people die along the way. Cheto was able to raise $200 from the things he sold and borrowed $1,000 to pay the coyote and also to get some for his trip. Cheto arrived in Hillsboro with empty hands, hungry and sick. He found a friend and found a job in the mountains cutting branches to make Christmas wreaths. He was happy because he thought he was going to send some money to his wife and his 3 children back home. At the end of the week, the contractor left the camp and left him and 3 other workers in empty cabins. The 4 had no idea where they were, who the company was, or the name of it, and they had to walk almost 2 days to get back to Cornelius. Cheto told me that story. And I said, how can I help you? If you don't know the name of the person, he only gave me the information of a red car and full of old things inside of the car, and that's all he could say. He wasn't able to give any more information. So they were dumped in the mountains. Needless to say, their work or his work was free because he never saw these people again. Second example is Sarah. Sarah is a lady who worked in a nursery. She had a baby as a result of being violated in her attempt to cross the border. She told me that she found work in a nursery, and the supervisor of the nursery made her work long hours. She had to beg him to allow her to go to the bathroom. He threatened her to fire her if she didn't work faster. And he sexually abused her as a condition to keep her work. She never received the salary she had been promised. Another example is Mr. Lorenzo Benitez, a teacher and artist. The only work he could find at the time that he came to this country was planting trees. He showed me his hands full of blisters. With tears in his eyes, he told me that he hurt all over that he wasn't used to this kind of work, that he had to work a lot, long hours, and the promise to make very good money. He was very frustrated because he was promised to get paid in 2 weeks, and this was the 3rd week, and he hadn't seen a penny. He finally received a check for 1 week pay with a promise to wait 1 more week to get the second half of the check. And the 2nd week came, and he says, wait for me 2 more days. And wait for me, that was the word, the key word. And he never saw that second part of this check. These 2 stories are true stories. They, and by the way, Cheto, in the first story, he became a roofer. And one day, he was working up at the roof. He rolled down, fell, and died. Some of his friends got together and were able to send the body back to his hometown, Chietla, Puebla. The contractor never responded to do something for him. That was the end of the sad story. Sad in the beginning and sad at the end. Some of the lessons that we learn from these stories, hundreds of stories that I learned have one common denominator. People aspire to lead a happy life and not being a burden to society. Individuals who experience abuse and wage theft are people that lack language fluency, basic education, basic life skills or work skills. Individuals that carry their pain and suffering in silence. People migrate fleeing from poverty in search for better living conditions, and they find themselves in deeper poverty when they come. An unjust salary, the retention of salary or wage theft denies the satisfaction of the most basic needs of the individual. Wage theft destroys the unity, the harmony, and the well-being of the family. The frustration of never reaching their dream, the loneliness and despair bring to their lives depression, violence, drugs, child labor, prostitution. All that has been going on, especially I have seen that among the day laborers. Wage theft is the illness that impacts the individual, the family, our social net, such as health system, the criminal system, the food banks, social life, education, civic participation. I would venture to say that wage theft is a disguised modern way of practicing slavery. I strongly encourage our state representatives to take up the role of protecting the rights of people and making sure our legal and court systems are just and fair. The highest virtue to pursue for our communities should be the embracing of every member in the sharing of the common good. The common good understood as a serious soul searching regarding how we work together, how we treat each other, especially the poor and the most vulnerable, and how we take care of not just ourselves, but also one another. Let's not wait for a massacre like the one that took place in Newtown in order to pass a law. The poor and vulnerable are being killed every day, one by one, in the darkness. And we are all responsible for not raising our voice. The victims should be encouraged not to be afraid to raise their voices. Social organizations must interpret the stories of the poor and speak up. And faith communities must be prophetic and raise their voices to cry once more like Moses cried, "Let my people go." Today is the day that we start raising our voice like Moses. Thank you.
I think that gives us an overview of the kinds of wage theft that occur and the kinds of people that are hurt by it. There's one other group that comes instantly to my mind that are hurt by wage theft. And we have a number of brothers and sisters that are represented in the audience today by building trades. Would you raise your hands, those of you from the building trades, the carpenters and the other trades that are out here? Many times in the trades, wage theft is perpetrated by the misclassification of workers. And they will have folks that are highly skilled and oftentimes journeymen being paid at entry-level scale for jobs that their skills far exceed. And so that is another whole classification of wage theft. And I wanted to acknowledge all the building trades people that came here today, because that is a very prevalent problem in their industry as well. I also wanted to take a moment to recognize Ramon Ramirez from Cancun in the audience. Ramon, if you please. And I understand too, Jim Hauser? Yes, Jim right here. Jim from the Main Street Alliance, and I was just passing up that you're going to have to, unfortunately, leave us very soon. So,
actually, I don't think I could leave. They can do without me, they'll make do.
Compelling comment. Thank you very much. And with that, before we get into a discussion or comments from those of us who are legislators, we'd like to try and run the video. Is that ready to roll at this point?
Could we sit down so we can watch the video again?
Absolutely. Yes.
Demolición, que fue lo que a mí me tocó, demoler el piso. Fue una invitación que me hizo un compañero, y por la necesidad que teníamos trabajar, pues acudimos a ese lugar para poder sustentar nuestra vida, nuestro alimento. Se nos prometió el lonche para ese día, pero no hubo lonche ni pago.
En Cornelius hay un sitio de trabajo para jornaleros y esta persona llegó a ese lugar y algunos compañeros que estaban ahí en ese día no quisieron irse con él porque ya sabían que no pagaba, pero yo tenía días sin trabajar y me quise arriesgar.
Él simplemente nada más se presentó como el dueño del lugar. Él nunca dijo yo trabajo para tal persona o yo simplemente soy el mediador entre el dueño y ustedes. Él simplemente dijo que necesitaba que hicieran el trabajo del granito y cuánto iba a pagar, y eso fue lo que nos hicimos. Empezamos a trabajar.
El primer día me pagó, el segundo día me pagó, pero ya después de ahí ya no quiso pagarme. Y le terminaba los trabajos y él no me quería pagar. Lo que él decía era que el trabajo estaba sin terminar o que le hiciera otra cosita más, algo extra para poderme pagar. Pero yo le trabajé nada más 1 o 2 días más, al ver que no recibía el dinero que me debía, ya no quise hacerle nada de trabajo.
La primera excusa fue que al dueño no le había gustado cómo se miraba el material en el lugar, pero esa es una excusa muy absurda para decir que el material lo compró él. Pero ella tenía material, nosotros nada más trabajamos, hicimos que quedara en el lugar lo que necesitaba.
La verdad sí es muy común. Hay mucha gente que he escuchado que no les pagan y ellos por miedo a veces miedo hasta la policía, abogados, simplemente no hacen nada y prefieren no cobrar el dinero y hacerlo.
Creo que la gente piensa que muchos de los que estamos aquí somos ignorantes y por eso estamos aquí. No, al contrario, gente que sabe, gente inteligente, gente que trabaja, gente creativa, gente productiva y que como tal estamos queriendo hacer algo por esa persona, pero se equivocó al querer quedarse con nuestro sueldo.
Como no nos quiso pagar, queríamos ver cómo podemos hacerle para poder recuperar nuestro dinero o de perdiz hacer tipo de justicia que no él hiciera lo que él quisiera. Y alguien de los que había trabajado para él, que le había hecho lo mismo, no le había querido pagarnos porque iban a meter una demanda y que si nos queríamos unir con ellos para hacer la demanda un poco más grande y que fuera más seria para llegar a un acuerdo con él.
De hecho fue un poco tedioso porque muchas de las veces tuvimos que faltar al trabajo para poder asistir a juntas. Tuvimos que tal vez salir temprano de trabajar o perder el día completo, pero a la vez fue provechoso porque no sabíamos cómo iba a terminar eso. Fue muy tardado y la verdad al principio pensábamos que estas personas se iban a salir con la suya, pero pues nosotros estábamos firmes en querer pelear por lo que se nos debía y seguimos luchando hasta el fin.
A los que establecen las leyes, por favor puedan crear leyes que puedan servir en protección al trabajador, que sean más cortos los procesos. A veces los procesos son muy largos y muchas veces las personas estamos dependiendo de ese sueldo que queremos recuperar, pero es muy largo, se hace un poquito desesperante.
And now if I can ask our legislators to return back up front for our responses.
Yeah.
Joe, would you like to lead off?
Wow, very powerful, and I want to thank all the panelists for their powerful words. Yeah, I just wrote a bunch of notes. I'm so honored really to represent you, to represent District 30, and it's a privilege, but it's a heavy privilege, and I want to invite you all to hold all of us accountable to respond to these issues. As Michael said, there are a number of bills that we're looking at, but I have to react to this very emotional presentation, or powerful presentations. And I was thinking, looking at this, how, as Sabino said, this is such a fundamental social contract in this kind of democratic capitalism that we live in. I mean, it's the very root of our civic engagement, and to call it theft, to engage in this kind of thievery is just appalling, but it's also detrimental, I think, to our whole society, literally. And so I think it just behooves us to make sure that this doesn't happen, that we instigate whatever we can to remedy the situation. I was thinking again about how Michael was saying where he's the chair, and then I've just been assigned to the Higher Education and Workforce Development Committee. So workforce development, I take very seriously. And obviously higher education is how we develop a workforce, but workforce development also means protecting workers, and it also means making sure that our workers have a safe and productive environment in which to work in. So, I was thinking about, again, some of these fundamental concepts. Literally, Karl Marx, his whole theory was based on the value of labor, period. And Adam Smith, his whole theory of capitalism was based on the notion of exchange. So this whole notion of labor and rightful exchange is, again, fundamental. And I think we need to be sure that we protect that. Also, it's interesting to me that I've said this before in other gatherings, that we really need to protect our economy. We need to protect small business. We need to support small business. But we also need to protect our workers and employees. It's, I sincerely believe in capitalism. Capitalism is the strongest economic force out there. But I do not believe that it has to be as harsh as it is. It doesn't have to be that harsh on people. And so it's up to us as legislators. All capitalism is an economic system, but we make the rules that guide that system. And it's up to us as legislators, I think, then, to make sure that those rules are right. And then finally, I'm just reminded by a quote that I keep thinking of in this job by George Eliot. And it basically she said that, why are we here if not to make the world a little better for each other? And that's what I believe, and I think that's what we're talking about today. So, thank you.
I'm going to be really brief because I think we want to actually have time to answer some questions. I'll just say that I think the last point that we saw in the video maybe is the most compelling and important to me, which is that the people who are being taken advantage of in these situations are often the most vulnerable, and the idea that they have to wait 3.5 years to get paid for a job that they were working in order to eat the following day kind of reminds you of how deep this challenging problem is. And I think that will be our challenge, is how to figure out how to help people tomorrow, not 5 years from now, and that's what I look forward to do.
You know, this video and the testimony that we heard just reminds us how distressing and serious a problem this is. And, you know, just looking at the magnitude of the problem can easily paralyze us into inaction, right? What can we do? But, you know, what I want to focus on is, you know, is the positive here. That is, you know, I look at this audience and, you know, yes, as the brother said, you are the choir, I think. I can see it from your faces. You already come into this very sympathetic to the nature of this problem. But I see a lot of interest in this issue throughout our communities. And the challenge is going to be how to capture that concern and that energy and move it in a productive manner. The challenges of wage theft are not new, and we've been working on them for quite a while. And just in the last legislative session, actually a wage theft bill having to do with contractors passed in the Senate, but was unable to pass the legislature because it came to the House and there it had no future because of the political makeup of the House last session. But, you know, I'm happy to say that we're in a much better place this coming session, thanks to what happened in the election in November, that I know many of you worked hard on to make change happen. And not only do we now have in the House a Democratic majority with 34 seats to 26 Republicans, but look at the people who are now in the House. You know, Joe Gallegos, Ben Unger, Tina Kotek, our speaker now. The chair of the Business and Labor Committee, Margaret Doherty, a longtime labor activist. Paul Holvey from the Carpenters Union, chairing the Consumer Affairs and General Government Committee. Brad Mitt, you know, from a variety of labor background, most recently with UFCW, chairing the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee. I see some great possibilities this session. And we have assembled a whole package of bills related to wage theft that we're going to be working on. Some are going to go to the Consumer Affairs Committee, others are going to go to the Business and Labor Committee, others are going to go on start on the Senate side. And we are hoping to really shed a spotlight on these issues and to get, if not the entire package, at least pieces of it through. And also, and this is really critical, one of the things that really has been holding us back has been the cuts to the funding of our Bureau of Labor and Industries, you know, so that we don't have enough people out there doing enforcement of the laws that we already have. We are going to, I hope, pass some legislation that is going to make it easier for BOLI because we'll have clearer definitions of the violations. We'll have clearer definitions of the responsibilities of these subcontractors. We're going to have legislation that will require subcontractors to put bonds in place that can then be used to repay the workers in a quick manner if there need to be judgments against them, or where we can get at the assets of these people. But unless we can increase the funding to, you know, to BOLI, the Bureau of Labor and Industries, it's going to be hard for us to get that enforcement. So that's also going to have to be something we're going to be working on. And as the economy comes back and our revenues to the state, we hope, increase, particularly if we can get some real progressive tax reform in the state, putting the money where it's needed will help everyone. Just very quickly, a few of the particular pieces of legislation we're going to be looking at is we want to make sure that when workers take on work, they're clearly notified in writing of what they're going to be paid and what they're going to be paid for, and that their paychecks list that very clearly. And I will say, just as a footnote, Brother Anderson was saying that these problems are not just in the non-unionized settings, that you know, this sort of underground kind of setting. Here at Portland Community College, I would say we have our problems as well, and part-time faculty are not clearly told what they're being paid for. We've had some problems recently where some part-timers have been asked, or told they have to repay like $5,000 because of an error that the college made. That I'm happy to report has been worked out thanks to the work of the union here. But these things happen, and workers will suffer for it, particularly those who are in the most contingent, the most, you know, vulnerable populations are the most vulnerable to this. Let me just quickly say, you know, another bill that we're looking at will deal with this issue of proper pay for breaks, you know, ensuring that people are given breaks and they're paid for them. And also, and finally, there's an element of this package that has to do with retaliation against work, stopping retaliation against workers who have the courage to complain. It takes a lot of courage to complain, and we should not allow any kind of retaliation against these people. So that's sort of what's out there, and a group of us are actually meeting this next week or the week after to figure out the strategy of how this is all going to move through this legislative session that begins on February 4th. We will not be successful if we don't have your active support, so I hope we can count on that.
We certainly have heard some very compelling stories here today, and as Representative Dembro said, in my other life, I'm a union representative, and professionally, I have dedicated my career to the concept that people should be paid a fair day's wage for a fair day's work. And that really is the bottom line for trade unionism. And as we heard from Jeff Anderson, if you are an employee, and the 99% of us in this country that have to work for a living are dependent upon a job for ourselves and for our families, if you steal from your employer, more than likely that employer is going to relieve you of the ability to earn a living. You're going to be fired for that theft. I think the same needs to be true of employers. That if they are stealing from their employees, denying them the opportunity to earn that living for themselves and their families. And as we heard from Bob Marshall, one company in 1 year, 250,000 people were denied the just wages that were due them, and that's only a fraction, a very small fraction of the people or what was caught. If those kinds of denials are going to continue, then the time has arrived where I think for employers, anyone can make a mistake. We all do. Let's recognize that. But I think that after a third strike in the state of Oregon, it moves from a mistake to the intent to deny people economic opportunity in this state, and it's time that we started thinking about developing a law that would deny employers the opportunity to further conduct business in the state of Oregon. Now, you have heard from all of those who provided testimony today. You've heard from those of us who are legislators. But I have to tell you that going forward, you're looking at 4 voices up here. Our strength comes from all of you. And as you heard Representative Dembro state earlier, he fully intends to bring a number of these wage theft bills forward. There will be hearings in Salem this year. You voted for the folks that are bringing these bills forward, and I thank each and every one of you for that, for the opportunity to be able to serve you. But none of us can get those bills across the finish line without your help and support. And when we have those hearings in Salem, I hope we fill the hearing rooms up just like you filled up this classroom here this Saturday morning. Thank you so very much. We have a short 15 minutes. I want to be able to get people out of here so that you can get on with the rest of your lives. But I also want to provide an opportunity for those of you who showed up and are aware of specific problems, either for yourselves or for friends and neighbors or in your industry. And I know there are a lot of folks, I mentioned the construction industry earlier, who have some very specialized problems. I would like to turn this over to kind of a question and answer session from the audience so that you can pose questions to us. You can provide us with information that we may be able to use in the hearing. So with that, I turn it over to you, the audience. Yes, sir.
My name is Scott. I'm with the Painters and Allied Trade Union. Actually, I'm an organizer, and as we go through this, I realized quite quickly like how many organizers are out there. The young lady who was up there before, how many millions of dollars we are already in concert to look at this problem and try to solve this problem. My question was to you is I'm going through my daily life as an organizer. I go to BOLI and OSHA and the Department of Justice and all these certain things. We have just maybe one individual or maybe even two. It's really not enough for them to even bring a case, and so there's these. Even though we're finding these, I can walk out the door, I can walk over here, I can walk anywhere. As a matter of fact, I was thinking that there was a construction site across the street. Of course, you brought a problem right here in our own spot right here. But so these spots, you just simply have to walk outside to find it. And on those small cases, they just like, well, can you get 4 or 5 other more people? Well, like you had said, finding one person to stand up is incredible, and we applaud those people. But my question then would be is the funding, obviously, for this all it comes down to the funding scenario. These people do not have the time and resources to deal with only the very largest of cases, and they're very small. I'm sure if we took all the organizers in the room and added up all their cases, I mean, it's so very few. So that's my comment. Question.
Yeah, let me just answer that. I mean, one of the things that we're looking at is increasing penalties, civil penalties on companies that are bad actors. We don't want to raise the taxes on companies that are doing the right thing. We want to, isolate and penalize those that are doing the wrong thing, and use that as a way to hire more inspectors, enforcers. To keep the game, to maintain a level playing field for everyone in the state.
Well, absolutely. I appreciate that because a lot of this is that it's part of doing it's good business, considered good business to rip these people off, knowing what the penalties are. That in the end, it's easier to pay a $5,000 or $1,000, or even $20,000 or $100,000 sometimes. Sounds like a lot of money, but $100,000 is close. It's part of doing business. So you can take that hit as long as you're making a couple of million. So
yeah, the fine has to be adjusted to the size of the company.
Absolutely.
Too.
Interesting point. Again, I think it was Jeff Anderson. I may have been. I think it was he who mentioned when he was up here on the panel that the number of BOLI officials are now about 1/3 of what they used to be. Bureau of Labor and Industries. And these are the folks that go out and do the inspections, and then probably the inspection is about that much of a much bigger case. Once you found the violation, then you have to take the employer and run the employer through the hoops till you finally get an adverse judgment against the employer for having done wrong. That takes a long time. Since I've been in the legislature, I'm now into my 5th term, every session, every 2 years, we have cut BOLI's budget over and over and over. Now, argument may run in the last couple of sessions that we had to cut back due to budget concerns. I entered the legislature when the economy was up and rolling, and we were still cutting BOLI back. And it's time that as we get serious about eliminating wage theft, we have to have the cops on the beat to help us make it happen. So you're absolutely right.
Hi, my name is Michael Birch. I'm a representative with the Regional Council of Carpenters. And when we heard about this town hall, we reached out to some of the members in our community who came out today to testify about real problems that they have faced in the community. So if you give them a minute.
Can we hear from some of them?
You can. You want to go?
Let us know if you want interpretation.
Okay. Where do you want him to stand? Go to the mic?
Come up here. Could you come up? Would you feel comfortable coming up here?
Yeah.
And we can interpret.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, my English is too bad, but I try to. Yeah. Pues yo estaba trabajando para una compañía Corfi, la cual me trasladaba con mi ser inmediato a Washington. Yo soy de Salem y Corfi.
I was working for a company called Corpeak, and they had me working up in Washington. I live in Salem.
He always, él siempre me decía que era mucho lo que me pagaba a la compañía para alguien como yo, que no merecía ganar tanto.
He always told me that I earned a lot and that I didn't deserve to earn such a high salary.
Trabajábamos para lo que es de las escuelas, en la fundación.
We worked on building schools.
Y lo que quiero contarles nada más que ese día me adhería ya lo que era de 4 semanas y no recibía mi cheque. Me gana la razón, pero
The story I want to tell you is that I was owed 4 weeks of work and I wasn't paid for it, and it makes me really emotional.
Él me pagó, me habían mandado hacer cheque por 2 semanas porque yo ya había recibido el otro cheque y que lo que yo quería era nomás robarles y que ellos iban a comprobar que ya había yo cobrado ese cheque. O sea, él decía que ya me habían pagado esa quincena y que yo ya había cobrado ese cheque, lo cual nomás me iban a dar de 2 semanas, pero cuando tuviera tiempo, porque no hay tiempo de pasar mis horas a la compañía.
So I paid that 2-week section, but I just hadn't had time to submit my hours.
Y me dijo, íbamos en su troca a Washington, que llegan para trabajar después de un fin de semana, y me dijo, si me sigues cobrando, lo que va a pasar es que pues ya no te voy a trabajar, te voy a bajar aquí.
So we were on our way driving up to Washington, and he told me, if you keep trying to charge me these hours, I'm not going to hire you anymore, and I'm going to let you get out right here.
Y yo le dije, pues como quieres, pues si quieres me quedo, pero yo necesito dinero para pagar mi renta y mis biles. Y me dijo, todo pasa, si sigues cobrando yo tabalera todo mi margen.
And I said, well, I'm going to keep charging these hours because I need money to support my family. And he said, well, if you keep bringing this up, then I can even call immigration.
pues paró la troca y bajó mi backpack, mi mochila, y me la tiró al piso y me dijo, dale como quieras. Y desde noviembre me quedé sin trabajo y hablé al dueño de la compañía y él me dijo, voy a hablar con él. Y dije, no te preocupes, yo tengo medios para cobrarle lo mío por otros medios si quieres.
So at that point, he stopped the truck and grabbed my backpack and threw it out of the car and told me to get out of there. So I haven't been working since November. I called the owner of the company and he said that he could talk with this guy, but I told him I have other methods to deal with this.
Y me dijo, entonces me dijo, tú puedes trabajar estas 2 semanas limpiando mi casa, from clean the bushes, clean the bushes and clean the gutters. Yourself, you can go yourself, clean the gutters, everything. Just the last 2 weeks, you can work in my house, and I technically Robert, that's the name is Robert. Robert, the guy I bought. But after that, I still waiting for my pay because he no answer. He's never in home, he's never in the office. So I still waiting for my last 2 weeks, and I had a lot of trouble with these guys, but nobody answered. But yo pensé que no había con quién hablar esto. Yo sí pensé que estaba solo, pero empecé a investigar y allí en mi teléfono me contactaron y me dijeron que hablara con Juanito, con Juan Sánchez, y es la emoción, pero sí, pues eso es lo que me está pasando ahorita con Corpin, que siempre me dijo que palabras muy feas que pues, no son dignas de que se escuchen aquí, pero siempre recibí humillaciones por parte de mi jefe inmediato.
So I thought I had nobody to talk to. I thought I was alone in this. And then I was referred to Juan Sanchez. And we've been working with the issue there. It makes me emotional to talk about this company. And I received a lot of bad words, verbal abuse from my immediate supervisor.
Eso es todo lo que hay más gente que...
Say one more.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to make it clear that the Regional Council of Carpenters are union, but these are unrepresented workers. And the problem we face, like with Walmart, is that they don't pay area standards, and it affects everyone. It doesn't just affect the union jobs, it affects everyone in the community.
Sí, bueno, mi nombre es Sergio, yo soy uno también de esos trabajadores que no recibió su pago justo.
My name is Sergio, and I'm also among the workers who didn't receive their just wages.
¿Por qué no era justo? Porque trabajaba demasiadas horas, me daban nada más 20, 25 minutos en todo el día, ni 6 horas.
Because I worked a long day, a lot of hours, and I only received 20, 25 minutes of break.
Y las primeras 3 semanas pues esa compañía es donde estaba construyendo una compañía, como dijo uno de ellos, una compañía, después la Walmart, y estaba trabajando para una compañía que se llama ICE, que está en Newburgh. Y pues no recibía mi pago y no pertenezco al sindicato, pero también vengo aquí a representar que nadie tenga miedo a reportar a todo ese tipo de personas que luego ganamos dinero. ¿Por qué? Porque están robando tu dinero y tu tiempo.
So I worked for a company, we're talking about Walmart, I worked for a company called IC in Newburgh. And I'm here, I'm not a union worker, and I'm representing the idea that nobody should be afraid to denounce this kind of thing. It's not right. that wage theft is happening. No one should steal your wages.
Pues más que nada por eso que muchas personas de nosotros, de nuestra raza hispana, tienen miedo, como dijo el hermano acá, que tenemos miedo porque se van a echar la policía de migración, pero todo trabajador tiene su derecho, no hay que tener miedo a eso. Y gracias a ellos que están trabajando por eso, para la ayuda de toda la gente.
So,
Fantastic. Thank you very much for being here. Jim, would you like to come up and say a few words?
Thank you very much, Representative Whitten, and thank you so much for putting this whole seminar together, and thanks to Portland Community College for putting this together. My name is Jim Hauser, and my wife and I own and operate Hawthorne Auto Clinic in Southeast Portland for 30 years now. And I'm also the co-chair of the Main Street Alliance of Oregon, which represents about 1,200 small businesses throughout the state. And though you don't want to hear my life history, I have to say this feels very much like homecoming, as it should turn. I came to Oregon in 1965 as a VIST volunteer, worked for Valley Migrant League, and I lived in a migrant labor camp in Yamhill County outside Dayton, where, as it should turn out, I found out today that Representative Joe remembers coming there to, I lived in what was called the Great Hall that we restored for kind of serving the Mexican American primarily, with the migrant community that lived there. And we would show movies, especially on the weekends, and Representative Joe remembers coming to the Great Hall and watching movies there as a young man. At the end of my year, a farm worker organization called VIVA formed in Forest Grove, and a group of Vistas left Valley Migrant to come to work for VIVA, who was denied status to actually have real Vista volunteers, so we were freelance Vistas. VIVA pretty much became El Centro Cultural, and we spent a great deal of time in migrant labor camps. Representative Unger's great uncle had one of the more enlightened camps, but most of the really bad camps were Representative Joe now on North Plains, and especially Pumpkin Ridge, where there were big signs, you know, no VIVA, no Vista, no Valley Migrant League. We can't take responsibility for what might happen to you, kind of thing. This is really like homecoming. This was very, very nice. Well, let me just say that the Main Street Alliance of Oregon is very much in support of ending wage theft. And not only is it illegal and takes earned income away from the workers, but it harms the small businesses that are doing the right thing, are obeying the laws and paying people properly. It hurts us because we are then in a less competitive position for the other businesses that are cutting labor standards, cutting wages, and can then undercut us. And just an example from my own industry is we have to pay not only minimum wage, which isn't really such an issue, but we have to pay overtime for over 40 hours of work. New car dealers, as well as new farm implement dealers, are exempted in the state of Oregon from having to pay overtime. You can work 60 hours, you can work 80 hours in a week, and you are still only required to pay straight time. If you're a dealership mechanic, for example, that's the case in Oregon. It's an exemption that I printed off the Bully website today and brought in here. So for all the independent auto repair and farm equipment repair places, that puts us at a competitive disadvantage. So some of it's built into the law even. So I'm just here to say that Main Street Alliance of Oregon is definitely here to, and will be in Salem this year to support your efforts.
Thank you very much. Hawthorne Auto Clinic, brothers and sisters, give it a hard
Jesus Ramirez, and I work for the Carpenters Union. My question is, probably I don't understand about the politics thing, but I want to know, well, for example, if I work 1 month, we work one company, well, that happened to me. I work 1 month for the company. I spend all my savings in gas and lunch and everything, so I don't get paid. I have to sell my car and I get rid of everything. I never get paid. But my question is, if I don't get paid for that company, I don't have money, I'm hungry, I go to any store, I'm steal a piece of bread or a fruit, they call me, they call police, they put me in charge right away. Why it takes too long for the companies to file that suit? It's the same, it's a steal. So my question is, why? What is the difference?
I think your point's right on mark, brother, and I think that's what all of us were trying to suggest, is that we need the legislation to make wage theft a crime. It is a crime. It needs to be dealt with as a crime. It needs to be punished as a crime. And at the point that somebody's gone beyond making a mistake and has developed a record where they over and over and over again rip off their workers, rip off the workforce, they are no longer welcome to do business in this state.
That's right.
Yes.
Well, I'm Josh Montero with the Carpenters Union. Just to follow that, you're talking about they're no longer in business if they do a violation and whatnot, but it's so easy to open up another license. So what kind of enforcement are we taking to enforce that? You know,
that again is an enforcement issue, and as we have heard today, it takes a long time, oftentimes, to prosecute someone. And Representative Denbrough and Representatives Gallegos and Unger are joining the effort, and we're going to get some legislation that makes it easier to convict employers of specific reasons why they're ripping workers off. And oftentimes, the more specific you can make that, the easier it is to find someone in violation, and we're going to move forward. And yes, it takes time, but this is a democracy. We wouldn't have it any other way, but we're going to provide the tools for those who enforce the statutes in Oregon to be able to convict the people who are out there defrauding workers.
Yeah, and I think there is an element in one of the bills in the package that is going to make this a more public process, right? So if somebody is a bad actor and there is, you know, there are some judgments against them, that be a more public kind of thing. Is that right, Michael?
Yes, that is true.
All right, Michael.
I want to make 2 points. One is, while I would associate myself completely with the comments that various people have made about the need to get BOLI better funded and the resources available for better enforcement, I think that's all true. But I want you all to know that probably that's only a piece of the solution, and that a part of what we're trying to do in this package of bills is to put more power in workers' hands to be able to take action themselves on behalf of themselves. One of the ways you can do that through your union, but one of the ways you can do that is through getting a lawyer. The problem right now is, because judgments are so hard to get, because judgments are so slow to collect, and because there's no resources to collect against at the end of the day, then lawyers don't want to take those cases. But if we solve those problems, then it would be easier to get someone to represent you other than your mom, and then we don't have to worry that the only remedy is going to be depending on whether the state of the budget is such that we have adequate enforcement. We want to put power in workers' hands. That's the first point. The second point I'd like to make is that as we break up, if you are convinced that this is something that ought to be moving ahead, and if you're convinced that we ought to do something about wage theft, there are forms that you should have, that were available to you when you came in, but you might not have had reason to know what they were and why you should worry about it. But there's a pledge that basically says, I'm going to stand with workers and improve the laws on wage theft. And if you would fill that out, what it allows us to do is then to let you know when there's something important that's happening that needs to be addressed, so that we know who can call Representative who's it about what. And that's very important for us to be able to help mobilize the public in terms of this. So if you haven't taken the pledge for wage theft, please do so before you leave today.
And they can do that at the table outside?
That's correct.
All right.
Can I jump with one comment? Just, I want to thank you all seriously for being here, for all your work, whether you got paid for it or not. Seriously, I want to encourage you to, as Sabino was saying, I hope we're not preaching to the choir. What I want to encourage you to do is really reach out to other sectors, and as was being discussed, even the business community, because it really is detrimental to fair business as well. So I'd encourage you all to hold us accountable, reach out to other sectors, the media, do op-eds to the media about this issue, help us to get it out there, and then, as I said, really hold us accountable.
This was an absolutely incredible town hall. Thank you all so very much.